Good morning, everyone. Wow, we're in the room. Welcome to Event Sustainability Live 2023, brought to you by Event Industry News and Evolution Dome. I'm your host, Zach Goodman. I'm from DRP Group, and we are responsible for bringing you this fabulous stage at Event Sustainability Live this year, packed full of content. Before I introduce our next session, I just want to make you aware of the headsets. So that's optimal audio for you if you pop those on. We've also got captions on this screen to my right and your left. If you want to see those or hear those in a different language, please download the Interprify app. This side, we have the Slido QR code for any questions that pop up throughout the session. Otherwise, I'll be walking around with the microphone at the end of the session. So next up, we've got Nat Walker, who is Strategy Director at event agency EMC3. And she's going to talk about how sustainable events make business sense. Over to you, Nat.
Thank you so much. And yeah, huge thanks to DRPG for hosting this stage today, and congratulations on your recent B Corp certification. We received this ourselves quite recently, so we understand all the hard work that goes in, and just the more B Corp agencies, the better for all of us. So that's right, my name's Nat Walker. I'm the Strategy Director at Events Agency EMC3, and for a long time we've put sustainability front and centre, and we're fortunate enough to have a CEO and a leadership team that's always supported this. But over the last couple of years, we've really invested time and money into our sustainability credentials, and everything we now do is underpinned by our commitment to that sustainable future for events. And one thing I've personally learned after working with countless clients on making their events more sustainable is that one of the first roadblocks we often get is how and who is paying for this. The conversations I've had and the strategies we've put in place to answer this question have led me to this presentation, because sustainability isn't a box to tick or a nice to have, it actually does make business sense. First technical problem for you there. So you've probably seen or heard this framework multiple times: people, planet, profit. It's probably being talked about today somewhere, known as the triple bottom line. Anything that helps people understand the value of operating sustainably is absolutely fine by me. But with that said, I do think there is a better approach. By adopting a purpose-driven mindset, one in which sustainability sits at the core of business operations, brand, and innovation, profit should and will become a natural byproduct. Whether you're a corporate business, an agency, a venue, a supplier, there's multiple ways in which we can put a clear, measurable value to running our events in a more conscious way, and in fact, using them as a force for good. So before we dig in further, I wanted to share a few stats. We know that sustainability is more a part of the wider consciousness than ever before. We know that young people are more engaged with sustainability, and that this trend will only increase over the coming years as more and more of those young people have purchasing power, both as consumers and within business. And as you can see, 66% of consumers are willing to pay more for a sustainable brand. 30% would actually stop engaging with a brand because of ethical or sustainability concerns. B Corps grew 34% more than their category average counterparts. And even companies as large as Unilever, who've been running for decades, their growth over the last 12 months actually was 70% was accounted for by their sustainable options. And also, going into this, I just wanted to remind you of the UN's Sustainability Development Goals. You can actually hear more about these on this stage at 12:15, where there's a panel talking exactly about that my colleague Matilda is on, so don't miss that. These are a framework for transformation. They're a great start point when we start to look at where we can make those differences. And we know that not every event or project or small business can constantly be tackling all of these, but they're a great framework to remind us of the impact we can make. And I particularly wanted to highlight a few of them to remind you that environmental sustainability is only one piece of the puzzle. Being greener is really a small part of the wider impact of operating in a more sustainable way. This, of course, all ties back into the idea of what we said about people, planet, and purpose. And in fact, something we work closely with clients on is to use these as a start point to find out which of these best align with their purpose, their values, and their vision. We call this wider approach holistic sustainability. This is the belief that each of these goals and areas, methods and strategies are all intertwined, interconnected, and strength and success comes from making small incremental changes and gains across multiple areas of every event, product or project. So now we've talked a bit about the theory. let's get down to what's actually important. How do we take action? And how do we make this all-important business case? So the first question we ask, sorry for my stock imagery here, the first question we have to ask is, who actually pays for it? So as an agency, we're fortunate enough to work with a wide range of businesses across multiple sectors, B2B, B2C events, customer partner, internal. Something we've found is that the sustainability budget is often not clearly defined, or in fact doesn't exist at all. Sometimes there is money that exists within operations, focusing on sort of sustainability for the wider business and achieving ESG goals that they have, but that's very hard to tap into as a supplier or working on a smaller project. Sometimes there's money with HR or the people departments, but that's usually primarily focused on the employee engagement side, personal development, training, and things like that. And sometimes marketing does set aside budget more for the storytelling around sustainability, so, you know, the PR side. And there's no two ways about it. Some, not all, but some of the measures we do need to put in place are going to cost money. But this is why this business case is so important. We want to change that narrative. So sustainability isn't seen as a cost, but as an investment. And if we're making an investment, how do we show the return on that investment? What we need to develop is a clear, measurable, forward-thinking business case that shows data-backed value through increased engagement. If you've ever gone to any of your stakeholders to ask for money to do something sustainable, you know what they want to see. They want to see data and they want to see outcomes. And of course, cost savings as well. All of that alongside hitting your all-important sustainability goals. So we're going to run through a few areas that will help you build that business case. So these are all areas where we can see gains that come from this, not just being sustainable as we all want to be, that's why we're here, but actually business gains and value additions that we can do by making these changes. So firstly, let's look at the attendee experience. You're going to be paying for this anyway. It's why we run events, to engage with the people that are attending. So how do we direct this spend to both engagement and operating more sustainably? So there's some examples we've got here. First is that we work with partners like Just One Tree, that instead of just offsetting carbon, we actually can tell a story through. They're a reforestation nonprofit where you can pay £1 per attendee, and what you can do then visually is grow your attendee forest, and it's a great way of telling a story and engaging attendees in the fact that you are making a difference and making those offsetting costs. By utilising things like seasonal and local menus, we can branch out from the same old event menus at the same time as reducing our footprint. And actually, we worked very closely with the great folks from BMA House who are here today as well. If you want to speak to anyone that is amazingly knowledgeable in that area, you can even enhance this experience by providing carbon costs on menus and actually encouraging your attendees to make conscious choices about their own consumption. You can also run wellness workshops and activities. Feels like I'm just doing shout-outs, I'm not, but we have worked with loads of really cool people that are here. We actually partnered with Be In Your Element, who are here today, and they host quiet spaces and mindfulness workshops, things like that, which really supports inclusivity and accessibility, as well as that wider attendee experience. And another great example is custom swag stations. Swag is a really debatable subject, and I think there's also a talk on that at some point, which I'm going to try and catch. But things like on-site t-shirts, screen printing, bottle embossing, even we've done flip-flop customization stations. These always go down fantastically with attendees. They get to create an entirely unique souvenir. Well, of course, you're eliminating any unused or unwanted gear and ultimately saving costs. Moving on to employee engagement, your events are one of your biggest shop fronts. Whether they're internal events for your current employee base or customer-facing or consumer events where there's still every chance you'll be engaging with potential future talent, the value of being seen to be operating for good is clear. As you can see, 70% of employees reported that their company's strong sustainability program impacts their decision to stay with them long term. And when the data shows that the cost of losing an employee is anywhere between half up to 2 times their annual salary, the value of this is really, really clear. 75% of millennials would actually take a decrease in salary if it meant working for an environmentally responsible company, and 40% would choose one job over another because of an organization's sustainability practices. So being seen to do these things at these events, which is one of your most public-facing things, is giving you a clear edge over your direct competitors that don't hold or showcase their sustainability values. And next up is your content and marketing spend. So storytelling around sustainability can increase your content bank, offer opportunities to engage with press and increase overall brand awareness, and give you a talking point with new potential clients, which we'll get onto shortly. And through monitoring everything from thoughtful user-generated posts as they engage with those swag stations, those menus and things like that, all the way through to snippets of your reporting and your strategies, like we're showing here, we can use social media and other data to track a direct correlation between sustainability-focused content and an increase in audience engagement. But now let's talk about some of the easily quantifiable numbers. It's great to have all of those things where we can show value, but we want to see some of those figures. So to make the business case even to the most conscious of budget holders, we still need to show that the numbers stack up. And if we can identify areas that will actually save us money, this goes a long way in showing that we can offset any elements of the sustainable operations that do have an associated cost. Research from Keenan Recycling also says the average UK hospitality business spends up to £50,000 every single year on sending food waste to landfill. We can reduce this massively by simply offering something as simple as pre-ordering meals, snacks and drinks ahead of time. This will not only minimise your waste costs, but if done in a timely manner and working closely with partners who share these sustainable values, can actually save you money on your overall F&B budget, which is one of the biggest proportions of the majority of events. Using refillable water stations, which we love to see here and should be a given now, but unfortunately isn't, it seems like a no-brainer compared to the cost of single-use bottles and drinks because it has a positive impact both financially and environmentally. But again, depending on some venues, and particularly maybe in the US and other territories, this is something we still have to push to do. And let's talk a little bit about reusability. I remember about 10 years ago, I took an event across 3 stadium venues around Europe, and we created signage where all the directions were vinyl stickers, which we could peel off and turn around to show, okay, this breakout's over here today, this breakout's over there today. And that was 10 years ago, and it was revolutionary, I promise you. Nobody had ever done anything like that at that point. Maybe not ever. But now, you know, we are leaning towards more digital signage, and that's great, and venues are developing that in a brilliant way. But print still has a really important place in the live event world. So by making small decisions like those, not including dates and venues on things like banners, backdrops, even lanyards, or including these in a way in which they can be changed or updated, we're reducing both waste and costs because we can reuse those across multiple events. And the same goes for booth builds or roadshow style event elements. We love this over here. There's like an event in a box, you can see, that one, where they actually build their booths within flight cases. So they're really easily transportable, everything is protected, and we're eliminating the need for single-use materials. And this is also a great talking point for visitors. They love these, it's something different to see. And I promise I don't work for the event, but there's actually a whole panel about this as well at 12 on the main stage. Which I saw, which is worth checking out. If exhibiting and, you know, expos, sponsorship, that kind of thing is a big part of your events or field marketing strategy. And finally, creating your materials online. Obviously, we're eliminating the costs and unwanted print waste, but this is also a hugely important step in creating content that can be translatable, accessed via a screen reader, consumed in whichever way your attendees find most comfortable. Which leads us on to my next point, which is accessibility and inclusivity. Now at EMC3, we're fortunate enough to have an in-house accessibility lead, so I would never presume to be the expert in this extremely wide-ranging and important area. But what I will say is this: whilst making your events more accessible is a must, it really does make business sense as well. Without thinking about inclusivity, you're literally turning away potential customers, clients, partners, and employees who can't easily access your events and content otherwise. And I know not everyone here is thinking about B2B and expos and things I've touched upon, so here's another stat. According to Visit England, tourists and travellers with access needs and groups with members who have access needs spend over 15.3 billion a year on trips in England. Overall, that's 20% of the total annual value of domestic trips taken. So that's 20% of any market of attendees or potential audiences you could be missing out on. And I know it's very hard to quantify potentially lost income, but all the data is there to support the business case specifically for accessible and inclusive events. And now let's quickly touch upon the supply chain. From a client and customer perspective, we've already spoken about how individual people make decisions based on sustainability. But we're seeing more and more as RFPs come in and we speak to clients that sustainability is now a must-have right from the start. As for us, and I'm sure DRPG and all the other B Corps in the business, it's one of effectively the stipulations of our certification that we understand that people we work with also share those values and want to act as a force for good. And large organizations are auditing every possible area of their business operations and their own supply chain. And of course, their events are a huge part of that. So by embedding sustainability within your event management strategy, whether you're an agency, a supplier, or a venue, you're already a step ahead of your competitors. And in the other direction, working with sustainable suppliers means they can pass on to you their own cost savings and efficiencies, such as the reduced fuel consumption and transportation costs that result from optimizing things like logistics and distribution networks. I also read a fascinating article recently about the link between sustainability and innovation. And if this interests you, I can send it to you or you can ask me for it. But take a look or Google the concepts of lean and clean design and how and why sustainability and wider business success do go hand in hand. And I think this is my final shout out. But if you're particularly interested in talking to people who are doing some amazing work in this area, I'd recommend you head over to the White Light team, which I want to say are in that direction for a chat after this, or possibly over there hiding in the audience, actually, one of them. And so another reason that very soon working with a sustainable supply chain is going to become another must is it's actually going to become the law. So with the volatility of our current government and near constant change, it is hard to know and say exactly when certain legislation around sustainable event operations will come in or what exactly that will look like, but we do know that it's coming. As an example, legislation from DEFRA purportedly coming in 2024 is going to mandate that any business producing over 5 kilos of food waste will need to separate and recycle its waste through a registered food waste carrier service, and failure to comply can put firms at risk of potentially hefty financial penalties or other sanctions. And what we do know is that the partners, suppliers, services and consultants that you're going to need to work with to be able to put the right measures in place are only going to become more in demand and more expensive once this legislation actually is signed on the line. So getting ahead of the game now is helping you future-proof both your business and your budgets. And whilst climate-based risk reduction isn't necessarily a primary concern or a direct consideration for many of the people here today in the ways in which we work and the services we offer, it's absolutely worth looking at considering your supply chain. As an example, companies who had the foresight to invest in and prioritize renewable energy use over the last decade were substantially less financially affected in 2022 when fuel prices skyrocketed. And those that weren't as well prepared, we know who ends up paying for it in the end, the customer. And my final point, and possibly the most important, if you want to continue to make this business case for each project in each event year on year, you're going to need to show those decision makers a real return on their investment. And to do that, you need data, and that data needs to start from now. We call this benchmarking, and it's not as difficult as it seems. In fact, there's a number of partners and options here around today that can help and support with this. And you can see an example here of some of the outcome reporting that we provide to our clients. So you can see it's not all numbers, it's a lot of storytelling, and this helps them make the case internally or to their own budget holders or stakeholders. Simply put though, we do need to see that bottom line so that we can show how we're impacting it. So a quick recap if anyone just wanted to remember those topics that I've just sped through. It's a lot for 20 minutes, and I probably could have done like 10 minutes on each of those slides happily, and I'd love to talk more in detail to everybody afterwards, dig out any stats or data that you'd like to back them up. I'm a big data fan. But finally, because I did want to leave about 10 minutes if there are any questions, I wanted to just run through some next steps. So the first and the most important, and you really can do it now, is start tracking. Start right now. Find that benchmark. And you don't need to look at every single area all at once. It could be something as simple and quantifiable as your print costs. But get those numbers down because we have to start somewhere. Which leads us on to number 2, which is set your first goal. We use a framework of good, better, best. So we focus on what's possible, and then we push ourselves to do better, to do more every time. And put multiple numbers and metrics to each of those goals, so you can show your cost savings or increased engagement, as well as those environmental or sustainable impacts. And of course, collaboration and connection. By being here today, you're already part of this massive group of people who are already driving the events industry to a more sustainable future. Or you're here for Event Tech Live, in which case I hope I've won you over. We'd love you to join our Sustainable Events Slack community. It's a great group of people sharing best practice, suppliers, news, and events like these. And of course, I'd love to add you all on LinkedIn and answer lots of questions. I'm going to be here for the rest of the day, and I'll hang around because this is the stuff we love chatting about. My colleague Matilda is here as well, who is far more knowledgeable than me about the data and the carbon tracking and that side of things too. So if you have any questions, please do come and find us. So thank you so much for listening, and yeah, if there's any questions, I'd love to take them.
Give it up for Nat Walker. Thank you, Nat. We do have one quick question that has come in on Slido. What are B Corps?
What are B Corps? So B Corps are companies that have been through a rigorous certification process, rigorous as anyone that's been involved in it will know, that is run by an organization called B Lab. It's a global community of small to large businesses that have all ultimately gone through this process that focuses on their environmental credentials, that focuses on the way they treat their employees, that focuses on their supply chain, that focuses on a huge wide-ranging amount of areas that shows that they are operating as a sustainable business and as a force for good. And I highly recommend that you look into it, or if you are a small business or a medium business, to look into getting that certification. It's an incredible community to be a part of.
Amazing. Thank you, Nat. Any other questions?
Hi. I wondered if you had any recommendations on the best platforms or technology to actually make that business case in terms of capturing the data, capturing the numbers, and presenting them.
That's actually a fascinating question because I have many recommendations. There are so many, some of which are here today, some of which work across the wider business, some that work in a more of a consultancy way. I know Isla are here who have a platform called Trace. I know Event Decision are here. Matt's here somewhere over there, in fact. So they can support you in that. We are also working with partners like Greenly and Normative, who are more across the wider business, so rather than just project by project or event by event. And as I say, Matilda, who's right here, works with our clients to identify for them which of those platforms or which of those solutions is best, so please do have a chat with her afterwards and she'll be able to point you in the right direction.
Thank you. Cool. Do you want to go?
I hear a lot about offsetting as a solution, but I am not sure it is. Like, it sounds a bit more like greenwashing. You just, carry on doing the same and pay something to make you feel better. What do you think about offsetting?
Offsetting is a last resort. Offsetting is what we do when we can't make differences anywhere else. So obviously reduction is by far the first thing. So if we don't need to travel, we don't travel. We don't just go, oh, but we can offset it and it's fine. Because I agree with you. I think particularly larger organizations think that they can make a payment somewhere and everything goes away. We're trying to make that change from the ground up as a small agency, and that's why we do work to set all these goals. And within that business case, hopefully you can see lots of the measures that we do about changing the menus, about reducing travel, things like that. We want to put all them in place. What we can't change, we still want to track, and we still want to offset, we still want to invest in regeneration projects, we want to invest in sustainable innovation, and we do all of those things as well. So we certainly don't, put a number down and go, we've ticked that box. We like to take a multi-faceted approach to doing what we can, but there is going to be an impact. It's all about minimizing that, and then, as I say, a last resort is to offset.
Thank you for that question.
Hi, Nat. Sorry.
Oh, hello. Hi, Brian.
Just following on from that question, Google carbon removal. Carbon offsetting we think of as that's robbing the bank and agreeing to pay them back over the next 50 years. Carbon removal is still a bad thing. Carbon removal is more robbing the bank but paying them back the next day, where you actually pay companies to remove the carbon from the atmosphere, either through scientific methods or peat bogs is another. I'm not an expert, but there are companies out there now offering, and the price of that is coming down. I think we're down to about £150 a tonne on carbon removal now. So it's starting to be real. So.
Thanks, Brian. This is why I said you'd White Light are good people to talk to, because they're leading the way in lots of these areas.
Hello. You were talking a little bit about cost savings and the business case. Where have you found that you've saved money, and where have you then invested in this process?
So a huge saving for us is in trying to eliminate where we can single-use materials. So reusability, everything, as I said, from expo stands, content, print where we need to. Like, as an example, when we take things on a roadshow, when we have expos, there's some great print solutions where we can print things on fabrics, for example, which are reusable, easily transportable, don't get damaged, and you can just use multiple times. And we do save costs in this. One thing I would say, those cost savings do come over time, as opposed to necessarily on event one, and may in fact, there be an initial investment versus getting a piece of paper printed. With that said, over the course of that year or those multiple events or coming back even the following year, providing your branding hasn't changed too much, those costs are there. And what we then do invest that in where we can, and where there are costs associated, for example, is using local suppliers for food. Often do cost more. They do, like things like that, using technology. Some technology that we use that is more energy efficient comes at a higher cost. So like I say, it's all about trying to find the balance of where you can offset those costs versus where there is a cost associated with operating more sustainably. But that's why the other areas which I was talking about, which aren't as easy to quantify, like an increase in audience engagement, like that brand perception, the PR piece, the employee engagement, all of those things, it isn't easy necessarily to put a number to all of those. And the departments that track those aren't necessarily the same people as hold budgets with events and marketing. But actually, that's why another workshop that we do run with some of our clients is like an all-stakeholder team alignment, where we do get those people from like the HR team, from operations, and go, look, this is what your events do, and this is where it's having an impact, so can you support us back and kind of help us that way? So it's getting everyone on board and getting stakeholders engaged is really important so that we can make that balance.
Thank you, Nat. Any other questions? No? Okay, we'll give it up one more time for Nat Walker.
Thanks so much.